Given New York State's budget problem, will the court have to cope with decreased funding? And if so, where would you cut back?
You want me to go first?
I don't care. Raise your hand. You got
Judge,
it.
I'll take it. Of course, we can't know if and how much the budget is going to affect the courts. The judge may have some advance information on that she's privy to, and she may clarify that. But I think right now, with the situation as it is, it's hard to know exactly what cuts will be made and where. If I were to make cuts, or if I had to make, well, keep this in mind, first of all. The judges don't have any say in what happens to their budget. That budget is spoon-fed to the family court by the Office of Court Administration. So I guess the rhetorical question of, if I had the power to cut those programs, that's almost like a mirror image of the first question. How do you decide what is more important? I think I'd be more inclined to say that I would probably try and find a way to redirect the funding so that all of the worthy programs would have at least some funding to move forward. I can't think of a single program that I would cut entirely.
Thank you. You can start.
All right.
I'm not privy to any information on budget cuts, as I believe that there has been no decisions made in that regard, and if there were, the judges would not be consulted and would probably be informed after the fact. However, the way that budget cuts are most likely to affect us, I think, would not be in relation to the programs at all, since there's very few programs that actually receive any funding from the Office of Court Administration. The programs that I have initiated during my tenure as family court judge have almost uniformly been initiated through grants, private donations, United Way funding, and other sources, but not through the Office of Court Administration. They don't tend to get involved in such things, and I know that the Office of Court Administration recently said that, for example, they were not going to pay for court staff to attend meetings anymore in central locations, that they were going to have them locally closer to home. In other words, we would go to Rochester, say, than having everybody in the state go to New York City. It's a small thing, I would imagine, and that's about it.
Thank you. You beat the clock.
Any,
Go ahead.
any questions from the audience? All right, let's go to the next question then. It is said that judges are somewhat isolated by their role. How do you, or would you, keep it in touch with the community?
I can answer that. Well, I believe that I have kept in touch with the community during these past 10 years. Every time I have brought a new initiative to our county, such as CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, our drug court program, our mediation program, our programs where we've worked with juvenile delinquents, I have met with stakeholders, I have called meetings. When I started CASA, I must have sent out almost 150 letters to every single person I could think of, inviting them to come to a meeting to discuss the need for such a program, and we actually had to move the location of the meeting because so many people came that they couldn't fit in the room that we had reserved for the meeting. I have done volunteer work continuously throughout my entire legal career of 33 years in organizations that involve children and families, Girl Scouts, Family Services, BOCES, the Workforce Youth Council, and other organizations that serve children and families. I have met with every school association virtually in the county, principals, superintendents, guidance counselors, law enforcement, all the nonprofit agencies, and I would continue to do so because I think that this is very important to do so, because otherwise you could possibly find yourself in a situation where you were unaware of resources and didn't know what opportunities were out there.
Thank you. Mr. Calla?
Yeah, there's not a lot in what the judge said that I can take issue with. I can tell you that my own personal style would be to start right at the grassroots level. I think that kind of outreach, that kind of openness, and that kind of availability starts right there at the courthouse. It starts with the family court staff. It starts with the attorneys who practice in the court. It starts with the security who guard the court. You've got to be open to those people. Those are the people who are working for you, are looking at the judge and saying, you know, this is somebody that I've got to perform for. And I think sometimes there is a tendency to be isolated, and to isolate oneself. I mean, after all, the judge is the final decider. That can be very, very lonely. There are ways, though, and I think many of them have to do with personal style, to keep those doors open, to be accessible. I think it's important. I think it keeps a good judge in touch with what's going on, not just in his courtroom, but what's going on in the community at large and in the bar that serves the court. I've had an opportunity in my practice to experience a wide range of judicial personalities, judges whom I respect greatly and who I think do a great job, and I think that I'm equipped to emulate those great judges.
Thank you so much. This is a question from a league member. Mr. Calla has spoken about a culture of receptiveness in the family court. What specifically does this mean, and what is the current culture of the court?
I can answer that, I think, by rehashing what I've just said to the previous question. It's about being open to people, about being open to suggestions. It's a matter of restraint, if you will, in saying, I don't necessarily have to be the single person to make the decisions that make the court run. And let me give you a simple example of that. And this has probably little to do with anybody, and is of little importance to anybody but the attorneys who practice there. There are scheduling problems. Attorneys have tremendous caseloads these days just because of the nature of the practice and what it's become. And I think there are ways to go to the attorneys who practice in the court and say, how can we make your job here easier? One of those things that can be done, I think, is to work on the schedules with the court staff and with representatives from the bar so that cases are scheduled in a way so you don't have 3 or 4 cases that may have settled up and are ready to be disposed of, and because something else is on the court calendar, they must wait there for a half an hour, an hour and a half for work that might take 6 or 7 minutes. And it's especially true in the case of the law guardians who are being paid at a extremely reduced rate. They essentially make their overhead, and they're not getting paid for their time. So you've got to be very, very aware of their time constraints so that you don't create a disincentive for them to participate in a very worthy program.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to this as well?
Yes, I would.